Chapter 4. The Life on Wadeler. The bone of Renosa, in 2 centuries, had borne two spikes, one used and one remaining. Over the next 2400 years, 24 more spikes were created, bringing the total to 25. Then it was used again on Quantum, leaving 24 spikes. It has never been replicated or mass produced because of the intentional enforcement of medievalism across the empire by Renosa, and also due to severe resource limitations. Constructing a single giant orbital space station and maintaining it is difficult enough, and the creation of 24 spikes took 2400 years of relentless effort and immense technological strain. No one truly knows what happened between the outer and inner chambers where the elite soldiers, royal guards, and the royal couple were massacred. Only Doom Harris knows. After Hugo Walker was crowned emperor, he shut down all investigation and declared through propaganda that it had been a quantum conspiracy that was made up by Doom Harris himself. The African Guard, fiercely loyal to their commander, believed they had protected the throne, and with Quantum's sudden annihilation, there was no trace of evidence left. Merlin Ossoff was silenced by Emperor Hugo Walker, ordered into obedience and loyalty. It was a concealed coup, contained entirely within the outer and inner chamber, ensuring no one knew the truth except Harris himself. The Emperor's rapid propaganda campaign and the swift destruction of Quantum, the supposed evidence, cemented Harris's fabricated narrative. The loyalty of the African Guard now stands divided. They remain faithful to their commander, Doom Harris, believing they still uphold the law, unaware they serve the very architect of the deception. Meanwhile, Chief Priest Ray Platoon, power hungry and calculating, sought to exploit the chaos, driven by ambition and opportunism. Platoon viewed the assassination and coup as his chance to gain personal advantage under the new emperor Hugo Walker. A low light pooled in the throne room as Emperor Hugo Walker fixed Commander Doom Harris with a steady, unreadable gaze and asked, "Will the walkers of Wadeler ever be a threat?" Doom's voice was soft as iron. "Give them the things of life. They won't be a threat to you or your heirs line." Hugo leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "What is it?" he asked. Doom replied, "Wealth, power, pleasure, and fame. You give enough, they will be satisfied." A ragged laugh escaped Hugo. "Why not just kill them?" he replied. Doom's answer came like a warning wrapped in counsel. "I know Merlin. He is powerful and immortal. Better not." The children of the slain Emperor Mirandus, who are Michael, Jericho, Connor, Adam, and Jack Walker, were spared on the advice of Doom Harris and sent to the secluded planet Wadeler under the care of Grandsire Merlin Ossoff. The ruling families of Mantalosa have children, for they are the rulers, and only through strength does one ascend to power. The first man or woman who once led their family decades or even centuries ago to dominance and hereditary rule was simply stronger, keener, better than others. Their descendants inherit that same blood, that same sharpened essence of superiority. Thus, the legitimacy of Mantalosa's rulers and of every successor who rises after them is confirmed by lineage itself, by genetics. From birth, they are wrought and refined for sovereignty, raised in an unwavering discipline that fuses ruthlessness with compassion, cruelty with kindness, brutality with justice. Such a balance forges unity, order, and control. It sustains systems of loyalty, stability, continuity, and reliability. Loyalty, stability, continuity, and reliability. These enduring qualities form part of the reason why, across the vast tapestry of history, 95% of all human governments and societies, wherever and whenever they have existed, have taken the shape of monarchies: elective monarchy, absolute hereditary monarchy, constitutional, or any other type of monarchy. These are the events of the lives of Michael Walker, Jericho Nova, Connor Walker, Adam Walker, and Jack Walker from their current ages of 16, 15, 14, 13, and 12, unfolding over the next 10 years into the future. And Lotus Slave's current age of 10 as his life unfolds over the next 10 years into the future. Their lives and events are being traced from their current age through the next 10 years. Kylo Voras was the chief staffer of the royal exiled Walker household on Wadeler. When the spaceship touched down in ship park of the fort, he escorted Lotus to the grand entrance. The Walker children peered down at them from above, and Lotus gazing up at them in return. Kylo led him to the staffing area, keeping his promise to Melinda of providing Lotus a good life. Addressing the staff, Kylo said, "His name is Lotus. He will be a royal assistant from now on, a loyal servant. This little child will grow to serve the Walker children in whatever chores are necessary." The staff agreed, though not before seeking security confirmation from Merlin Ossoff. Kylo brought Lotus to Merlin, and as the elder laid eyes on the 10-year-old with blonde hair, green eyes, and polar bear white skin, a Nordic by ethnicity, he felt an immediate mystical attraction, drawn instinctively to the boy, yet cautious. "You say he is from planet Gabonia?" Merlin asked. "You know it is filled with rebel activity. Are you sure you want him as part of the royal staff, especially near the children?" "Yes," Kylo replied. "He is obedient. He would be no threat. His understanding of the world is very limited and will always remain so. His intelligence is low. He is intellectually disabled." Merlin said, "What?" Voras said, "Yes, Minister." Kylo said, "He speaks in short sentences, struggles to make eye contact, and becomes upset when his daily schedule changes. He learns slowly, needs reminders for simple self care, and spends hours spinning the same toy because it helps him feel calm. I spent 3 days with him on the spaceship from Gabonia to Wadeler. He is autistic." "Fine," said Merlin. And from that moment on, Lotus began his life with the fort of Wadeler. Over the next 5 years, Lotus served and assisted the five walkers. It was Jack Walker who first gave him the mocking nickname Slave, and soon all five boys called him that whenever they needed him for work or simply wished to bully and humiliate him for their amusement. From then on, within the royal household and everywhere his name was spoken, he was known as Lotus Slave. He was mostly abused and mistreated by the walkers, physically, socially, and verbally. He was isolated always, sitting in the corners. The ages of Michael, Jericho, Connor, Adam, and Jack were 21, 20, 19, 18, and 17, and Lotus Slave was 15. The youngest brother, 17-year-old Jack Walker, the one who had given Lotus the name Slave, got a girlfriend, Elysia, a 15-year-old from planet Sedna Zero during his travels. She was an orphan, and he wanted to be with her, and she liked him too. When he returned, he brought her to live in the fort. She was Nordic, similar in ethnicity to Lotus Slave. One day, Lotus Slave approached Elysia and said, "Will you be my sister?" And Elysia said, okay. Why? What does that mean?" Lotus said, "I tie the rope on your wrist, your hand." Elysia hesitated for a moment, then smiled softly and let him tie the black string around her wrist. "You are my sister now," he said, his voice bright with excitement and innocent joy. Alicia knew of his condition. Her boyfriend Jack Walker had already told her that there was a stupid one in the fort. Someone who never understood anything, merely loyal, obedient, and purely innocent, an artist with low intelligence. As Stafford Voras told us, Jack had said with a sneer, "Total loser he is. He is my slave." From then on, Lotus Slave called Elysia as Sister Elysia. Jack did not like it. He was young and fickle, but Elysia insisted that he not stop Lotus from calling her sister. She defended him from the other Walker boys, from their verbal, social, and physical abuse, and she treated him with a rare kindness that stood in quiet defiance of them all. But where had Lotus Slave learned of the brother sister bond, or that curious tradition of tying a knot around the wrist that, for everyone in the fort, remained an unanswered mystery? Lotus always spoke in a gentle, neutral, monotone manner, never mocked or insulted anyone ever. He was childlike in all aspects. As he grew in age, he was handsome, very handsome, even more attractive than all the Walker brothers. Lotus Slave was verbally bullied, socially excluded, physically attacked, discriminated against, neglected, mocked, scapegoated, and falsely accused of stealing, breaking something, or causing an injury he never committed. He was often coerced into fights during martial arts training, where he was beaten. This was done by the Walker brothers, Kylo Voras, members of the royal staff, and even the everyday people of Wadeler. The only exception were Sister Elysia and Grandsire Merlin Ossoff, though Ossoff was rarely present on Wadeler. After 5 more years, Michael Walker is 26, Jericho Nova is 25, Connor Walker is 24, Adam Walker is 23, Jack Walker is 22, and Lotus Slave is 20. The present age of each in the current time now, and Sister Alicia is also 20. One day, in the open door martial arts training place of the fort, Michael took the toy doll of Lotus away, mocking him, and Lotus got angry. In his childlike fury, he seized a sword and walked angrily towards Michael, stopping just 2 feet away. Both stared at each other's faces, Lotus ferociously, Michael mockingly. "What will you do with your little sword, slave?" said Michael. Everyone was present. Adam, Jack, Connor, Jericho, Kylo were leaning against a nearby pillar. Elysia said, "Michael, stop." Both continued to stare at each other with intense focus. Then Michael kicked the sword Lotus was holding and it flew, falling 15 feet away. All the brothers and Kylo walked away into the fort, mocking and laughing. Alicia went last, pausing to glance at Lotus for a moment, her hands folded, then walking away, sad and upset. No one remained. Lotus just stood there, calm and concentrated. The sword, 15 feet away on the ground, slowly lifted into Lotus's hand height, levitating before swiftly floating into his left hand, and he grabbed it. A psychic telekinetic phenomena. Virondrax, a new royal servant assistant appointed by Kylo Varas, the same age as Lotus, became best friends with Lotus. Both Lotus and Viron Drax ventured into the city outside the gates of the fort, roaming the bustling streets together. Viron and Lotus got along remarkably well. Viron was a man of integrity, and he taught Lotus how to be like him. Lotus, due to his autistic nature and limited cognitive ability, followed Viron's guidance with excessive diligence. The behaviors Drax instilled in him revolved around empathy, altruism, philanthropy, compassion, kindness, generosity, and benevolence. Viron Drax had converted to the Christian religion of Chiron, though he was not Hispanic. Lotus Slave wandered through the city, the streets alive with the muted bustle of merchants, the distant clatter of carts, and the occasional shout echoing between stone buildings. Over the course of few hours, these were the events that unfolded. Lotus noticed a stranger, a poor man, a peasant shopkeeper, struggling under a load heavier than himself. Without hesitation, Lotus stepped forward and helped carry it to the man's modest shop. It was a box full of rice, and the man, weary farmer, thanked him with a tired but genuine smile. Lotus nodded quietly and moved on. A few streets later, his attention was drawn to a thirsty, hungry stray puppy, crouched in the middle of the cobblestones, neglected and shivering. Lotus lifted the small creature gently, and with some Mandalosan currency, bought food and water, setting them down for the puppy, which lapped eagerly, visibly relieved. He continued wandering, searching the streets for opportunities to practice the lessons instilled in him by Viron Drax, his Christian friend. He came across tiny kittens and offered them water and scraps for food. Caged rabbits in a market stall caught his eye. He carefully released them, watching them hop into freedom. Later, Lotus encountered a homeless man, ragged and cold, and purchased food and clothing, dressing him in warmth and dignity. Then, heavy clouds gathered and rain began to fall, drumming on rooftops and puddling in the streets. Lotus spotted a pigeon trapped on the road, its wings soaked, unable to lift itself into the wet sky. He scooped it up with gentle hands, sheltering it under a nearby shed. He brought milk and offered it to the bird, watching patiently as it drank. After an hour, when the rain finally ceased and the clouds began to part, the pigeon flapped its wings and soared into the open air, free once more. While traveling back to the fort on the medieval modern style train, Lotus noticed an elderly woman standing amid the gentle sway and rhythmic clatter of the carriage. The scent of worn leather and the faint tang of coal lingered in the air as passengers shifted uncomfortably in the tight space. Without hesitation, Lotus gave up his seat to her, his movements calm and unassuming, offering a quiet, respectful smile as she settled down. Her eyes softened with gratitude. After a few minutes of walking through the train compartments, Lotus noticed a lonely child, probably around 12, crying softly in a shadowed corner. He knelt beside the child, his presence gentle and calm, and comforted him with quiet words and reassuring touch. Reaching into his belongings, Lotus took out a candy he had and offered it to the child, who accepted it with hesitant gratitude. The boy's sobs gradually softened, and for a fleeting moment the rumble of the rain, the clatter of winds, and the murmurs of the passengers faded into the background. And then the train stopped at a station, and the boy got off, walking slowly among the platform. From inside the carriage, Lotus saw a group of older boys, about seven of them, all in their mid teens, suddenly surrounded the child. Their movements were rough, their voices sharp. Without hesitation, Lotus followed. He stepped out of the train, thought it wasn't his station, though it wasn't his station, and moved after them as the boys dragged the smaller one down a narrow street, leading him into a dead end, a secluded corner shrouded in shadow. There, the beating began. The older boys shouted, "Where's the money? Where's the money, Jared? You fool!" One of them grabbed the child by the legs, lifting him upside down and shaking him violently. A few coins clattered to the ground, quickly snatched up by the others. Then a single candy fell. The biggest of the bullies dropped Jared carelessly to the dirt and reached for it with a smirk. As they turned to leave, a quiet voice stopped them. At the entrance to the alley stood Lotus. His tone was calm but unyielding. Give my candy back to him," he said. The boys froze for a heartbeat, then burst into mocking laughter. Their taunts echoed through the narrow passage as they advanced, confident and cruel. But before a single blow could land, Lotus moved. In a blur of motion, swift, precise, almost inhumanly fluid, he struck. In 7 seconds, all seven attackers were drowned, sent crashing into the walls and tumbling to the ground. Dust and echoes lingered in the aftermath. Lotus stepped forward, grabbed the shirt of the fallen bully, and drew back his fist, eyes cold and steady. For a moment, anger trembled in him, but he stopped himself. Slowly, he released his grip and let the boy fall. The bullies scattered, scrambling away in panic. Lotus picked up the candy, turned to Jarrett, and placed it gently in the boy's hand. Without a word, he walked away. He was in some alien town now, far from familiar streets, as it wasn't his station. The air felt strange, the architecture foreign, the language of the vendors a soft hum of incomprehensible tones. Amid the dim glow of the street lamps, Lotus noticed a sad man sitting by the roadside, rambling to himself, his clothes torn and stained with dust. Moved by instinct, Lotus walked to him and gently placed a hand on his shoulder, asking softly, "What's wrong?" The man continued to ramble, his words tumbling out in fragments, echoes of loneliness, regret, and quiet pain. Lotus listened patiently, saying nothing, for 2 whole minutes. His presence steady and calm as the man poured out his sorrow. When the man finally stopped, tears welled in his very ears. He looked at Lotus with trembling gratitude and whispered a simple thanks for acknowledging his existence. Then, with slow steps, he turned and walked because of the insignificance of the reality. Then, with slow steps, he turned and walked away into the alien night, leaving Lotus standing quietly under the flickering light of the street. The next day, Kylo Voras summoned Lotus and ordered him to recover an amount of money Kylo had loaned to a poor family in a destitute community. They had failed to pay back the debt with interest. When Lotus returned empty handed, Kylo's eyes darkened. "Go," he said coldly, pressing a cane into Lotus's hand. "Drag them into the village center and cane them. And while you're at it, take back the money from the other desperate, worthless families, those weak nutcases. Teach them a lesson." He sent Lotus with 10 armed guards. As they rode toward the village, the sun hung low and harsh, casting long shadows over the dusty path. Lotus's heart felt heavy. His master had given him an order, but something inside him stirred uneasily, whispering that this was wrong. When they reached the small village, the guards fanned out, preparing to ransack the homes. The cries of frightened families echoed faintly through the narrow alleys. Lotus stood still for a moment, eyes lowered, listening to the trembling voices. Then he breathed deeply, and his gaze sharpened. When the first guard moved toward the door, Lotus stepped forward. In an instant, motion replaced hesitation. Lotus' slave moved like wind and steel, graceful, fluid, unstoppable. A guard lunged. Lotus sidestepped, sweeping his leg out and striking the man's wrist with the cane, disarming him effortlessly. Another came from behind. Lotus spun the cane, whirling through the air, its tip cracking against armor and bone. Within seconds, he was surrounded, but his movements were art, each strike precise, each evasion deliberate. His body weaving between blows like a dancer of war. Dust rose around him, the thud of bodies falling one after another, echoing through the square. In 7 heartbeats, it was over. The guards lay scattered and groaning in the dirt. Lotus tied each of them to the great tree in the center of the village, his expression calm and resolute. He turned toward the trembling families who had gathered their eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Lotus refused to take advantage of the vulnerable. He had chosen his path, not as a servant of cruelty, but as a protector of the weak. Then the guards returned a day later and reported everything to Kylo Voras. He listened in silence at first, his expression unreadable, and then burst into laughter, cold, mocking laughter that echoed through the marble hall. You liars, he said sharply, rising from his chair. Incompetent fools, you were overpowered by a peasant crowd? Shame on you. Do not lie to me. His eyes narrowed, amusement curling into disdain. Lotus is incapable of such things. He waved his hand dismissively, his voice cutting like a blade. You're all dismissed. And just like that, Kylo Voras fired them, leaving the guard standing in stunned silence as he turned away, still half laughing in disbelief. Weeks went by. There was a small Shironi Hispanic Christian group dedicated to helping the disabled people of Wadeler, and Lotus volunteered for it. While others spent their holidays in rest and revelry, he worked quietly for 18 days, giving his time and strength to those who needed it most. One afternoon, as the golden light slanted across the busy streets, Lotus noticed an elderly man ahead of him drop a few pieces of Mantalosan currency by accident and continue walking, unaware. Without hesitation, Lotus bent down, picked up the scattered notes, and hurried after the man, returning them with a gentle smile. The old man's eyes glistened with gratitude as he thanked him warmly. Lotus, in his immense innocence, continued to do the same wherever he went, finding lost items and returning them to the rightful owners, moved not by duty but by quiet goodness that guided his heart. As Lotus returned to the fort, Elysia came rushing toward him, panic written across her face. Her breath was shallow, her hands trembling. She looked at him for a moment, uncertain, then turned as if to leave, thinking he could be of no help in her current distress. But Lotus gently stopped her. Why are you tired? He asked softly. I am not tired, she replied, distracted and anxious. Then, what are you? He asked. What? She said, confused. What? He echoed, tilting his head slightly. His voice calm and sincere. The awkward exchange broke the tension for a heartbeat before she finally confessed, her words tumbling out in panic. Lotus, I broke a cup, a glass cup. It's Michael's favorite. I didn't tell my boyfriend, Jack. I'll tell it to Michael myself. I'm in trouble. Before she could stop him, Lotus turned and quickly went straight to Michael's quarters. He stood before him and said quietly, I broke your glass cup, your favorite one. Michael froze. Then his face twisted with anger. Without a word, he grabbed a wooden stick and struck Locus across the back. The blows came hard and fast, again and again, until the sound of it echoed through the room. Alicia ran in, screaming, Michael, please stop, stop it, Michael, I did it. But Michael didn't believe her. Stop trying to protect him, Alicia. This fool did it. And anyway, you always defend him, he shouted, striking Lotus again. The beating went on for a solid 30 seconds before Alicia fell to her knees, begging him to stop. Finally, Michael screamed, Elysia, go back to Jack, and kicked Lotus out of his room. Lotus took the punishment in silence, accepting the pain, accepting the blame for someone else's mistake to protect her, taking the punishment even though he was innocent. Later, Elysia brought him to the medical room. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking. Why, Lotus? Why? She asked, her words breaking with guilt. Lotus looked at her with quiet sincerity and said, Remember, I tied the black string on your wrist because you are sister. Jericho Nova came to Lotus after hearing Elysia and asked Lotus for forgiveness. I was young and stupid, he said softly. I am sorry for the mistreatment and distress I have caused you. Lotus for, forgave Jericho Nova and said innocently, "It's okay." Jericho smiled faintly and said, "You know what? Even though you're a servant, you are like a younger brother, to be honest." Chapter 4, The Life on Wadeler, is over. Thank you.